Russia is aiding Iran's war effort by providing intel on U.S. military targets. To anybody who knows about the long-standing relationship between the Iranian government and the Russian government, this should be of no surprise. The main attack drone that the Russians have been using for going on 4 years now, 5 years now, is the Shahed. It is a Iranian-designed drone that was then, after its use in Ukraine, rebuilt, restructured for the war of mass launches against Ukrainian infrastructure, painted black to match the black skies while they attacked Ukraine at nighttime, and since then have swarmed over 50,000 long-range kamikaze drones at cities like Kharkiv, Mykolaiv, Kherson, Zaporizhia, Dnipro, Kiev, Lviv, all sorts of, everywhere from Cherkasy to the city center of Kiev. So they obviously assisted the Russians in their war effort. And it's not that this is a one-way street where the Iranians are just trying to be friendly to the Russians. It's not a one-way street. They have both been oppositional to American security interests for a very long time. They both see themselves as rivals of the United States, Iran regionally, Russia more globally from their perspective. I guess Obama and his advisors would have argued regionally as well. Possibly these advisors today as well, kind of making the same mistakes over and over. Either way, the idea is that Russia and Iran lean on each other when put under pressure by the United States and the global community, and they have worked with each other when it comes to things like air defense systems. If Iran used a lot of Russian air defense systems, now did that particularly help them in the air war? No, but they got them from somewhere. They have to get their air defense systems from somewhere. Who else is going to provide them to them? The United States? China? Russia's right there, and Russia had them, and they had to quickly rebuild them after the 12-day war, but that didn't do them too much good. But still, the fact that they have those air defense systems means that the United States at least has to be aware of them, and they had to get something in exchange for that. Obviously, if Russia is going to be helping Iran rebuild its air defense capacity, Iran might be providing something in return for that. These are the ways they lean on each other, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. So really, this is not that surprising that the Iranians would provide this intelligence. Let's read a little bit on this and then talk about America's response and what we have been doing in the meantime, which might be quite counterproductive. Russia is providing Iran with intelligence about the locations and movements of American troops, ships, and aircraft, according to multiple people familiar with U.S. intelligence on the issue. The first indication that Moscow has sought to get involved in the war. Much of the intelligence Russia has shared with Iran has been imagery from Moscow's sophisticated constellation of overhead satellites, one of the people said, meaning that they're giving before and after shots of American military bases to make sure that they see if they hit the right things, if they hit the barracks where all the boys are. It is not clear what Russia is getting in return. CNN has asked the Kremlin about the Russian embassy for comment. It is also not clear whether any single Iranian attack can be linked to Russian targeting intelligence, which was first reported by the Washington Post, so it's not just CNN reporting this. But several Iranian drones have hit locations where U.S. troops have been in recent days, as Iranian drones struck a makeshift facility housing U.S. troops in Kuwait on Sunday, killing 6 service members. One of the sources briefed on the intelligence said, "This shows Russia still likes Iran very much." The U.S. also has intelligence suggesting that China may be provide Iran with financial assistance, spare parts, and missile components. 3 people familiar with the matter said, though Beijing has stayed out of the war until now. China relies heavily on Iranian oil and has reportedly been pressuring Tehran to allow safe passage for vessels through the Strait of Hormuz. China is more cautious in its support. It wants the war to end because it endangers their energy supply. This is true. The CIA declined to comment for this story. So, Russia is providing Iran with imagery data, at the very least, about U.S. bases, likely before and after shots, and the location of American aircraft and troops as they move around the region. This is at the same time we know that at least 6 service members have died, dozens more have been wounded, and the American government was surprised by the ferocity, the size, and the scale of the response, going as far to target many Gulf state allies. They were not expecting that response to be so quick, which is part of the reason why they did not have an evacuation plan. And so it is not crazy for me to believe that in all this chaos, the Iranians, while trying to struggle to keep their regime alive, which the Russians do not want to see topple, were getting assistance from the Russians in the form of intelligence, which is one of the easiest things for the Russians to provide to the Iranians without straining their own war effort. All the other things they could provide, interceptors, different air defense systems that Russia needs right now, protecting their oil fields and their military production facilities from Ukrainian long-range drones, which have continued to massively expand in production to the point where hundreds of them can attack, at least well over 100 of them can attack Russia a day. They need them for themselves. They need their artillery for themselves. They got their own war they're fighting. They got their own dead-end job to be helping you with your dead-end job. So instead of providing any physical munition, they're providing intelligence and targeting data, considering that, some drones could fall in a parking lot here, some drones could run into a random, apartment block there, can be quite useful. In fact, when the United States provided Ukraine with the intelligence on the exact locations where Russian energy production was most vulnerable, what components would be the hardest for them to replace, that's when the Ukrainian drone effort had its most effective campaign, had its most effective damage, disabled Russian energy production more than at any other point in the war when they knew exactly where to strike. And so one might think, well, it's not a bomb, it's not a bullet, it's not, they didn't go out there and shoot Uncle Sam. But if they tell them where Uncle Sam's boys are hiding to go shoot them, if somebody comes up to you with a gun and says, "Where is an American soldier?" and then they point you in the direction of that, somebody comes up to you, "Where's an American soldier?" and you don't give them an information, you turn to somebody and they point them in the direction, did they help kill an American soldier? If you're watching somebody walk up to somebody and say, "Where's an American soldier?" point them in the direction, they helped kill him. They helped kill him. Now, this isn't surprising to me. I'm not, this is obviously, I'm an American. I'm from the United States. This is something that I'm upset about, that American soldiers are dying, but it doesn't surprise me. It doesn't surprise me that a war of choice made at this stage in the negotiation process, while Congress is not informed, while the Russians are trying to keep the allies that they still have at the table of world affairs, that they're going to provide them this type of data. It's not that crazy to me. Think about it from this perspective, from the Russians. How much targeting data has been provided against them? Like we were just talking about the oil fields. So if those oil refineries and fields can get targeted, oil refineries mostly, that's where the profit comes in Russia, why wouldn't the Russians do the same? So this is not an unbelievable story. This is a very easy to believe story, but it does complicate, or it would, maybe under a different presidency, we'll see in a second, it should complicate negotiations from an administration that has shown endless patience for the Russians, but very minimal patience when it comes to negotiating with the Iranians and finding some compromise. With Trump literally saying today, there will be no deal with Iran except unconditional surrender. So, pretty difficult position for Trump to be in. At the same time, though, what is Trump doing? Well, he's easing sanctions on Russian energy. The U.S. government has temporarily eased sanctions to allow India to buy Russian oil currently stranded at sea amid escalating tensions in the Middle East. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said the 30-day waiver was a deliberate short-term measure to allow oil to keep flowing in the global market. Millions of barrels of oil and gas are stuck near the Strait of Hormuz, a narrow Gulf choke point through which nearly half of India's crude oil and gas imports transits. Tehran has threatened to attack vessels attempting to pass it since the U.S. and Israel began the war in Iran. So it seems that this is meant to make India buy up more Russian energy so that they don't buy up other sources of energy. And so that makes the global oil price not rise as high. even though the global oil price is very much still rising. It's at $92 a barrel now, and it will soon pass 100. So how effective this will be in actually slowing that climb, I don't know. But if it isn't effective, then we could expect, instead of trying something else besides easing sanctions on Russia, we could expect possibly more sanctions being lifted on Russia.
The Indians had been very good actors. We had asked them to stop buying sanctioned Russian oil this fall. They did. They were going to substitute it with U.S. oil. But to ease the temporary gap of oil around the world, we have given them permission to accept the Russian oil. We may unsanction other Russian oil. You know, the other thing Treasury can do here, Larry, is there are hundreds of millions of sanctioned barrels of sanctioned crude on the water, and in essence, by unsanctioning them, Treasury can create supply. And you know, we are looking at that. We're going to keep a cadence of announcing measures to bring relief to the market during this conflict.
Mind you, there are other things they could have tried first. They could have tried using U.S. stockpiles. They could have, you know, tried ending the war. There's other things that they could have tried, but we went to easing sanctions and then talking about the relief of further sanctions. Anyway. So they're unsanctioning the Russian oil. Oil is going up. Gold's going up, which should also help the Russians. And PAC-3 interceptors, they're going down. The very type of interceptors that the Ukrainians want from the United States. There's now less of them amongst the Gulf allies. And I'm just going to take a wild guess that Donald Trump is going to get better along.
A curd is a curd.
Modern problems require old solutions. Whichever works are.
Thank you very much for the $13.99 Canadian, Desmond. I do think, thank you very much. I really do appreciate it. I do think that Trump is going to get better along with the monarchs covered in gold who get to chop up their journalists. And he's probably going to prop up the people with a lot more money to throw around and gifts to give than Zelensky and the Ukrainians, even though they probably will need these for a longer period. And they've been asking for them for a much longer period because the Gulf states just use them. Either way, this war has not exactly fallen in a way that we would say is the most favorable to Ukraine's conditions. Maybe as the war goes on, that will change. But for now, it hasn't. Now, Trump is asked specifically about not, hey, you know, Ukraine is kind of getting shafted here. It seems that we've all kind of accepted that Trump will take one action that shafts them, and the next day say, oh, you know, I'm not nice to Putin. The next day we'll say I'm not nice to Zelensky. We'll flip-flop. And that's been the state of affairs for over a year, so it's not even like a headline now. What's interesting about this is if the Iranians are getting provided targeting data by the Russians, then can we not say that the Russians are contributing to the deaths of American service members in the Middle East? This question is thrown at Trump by Ducey, a Fox News reporter. But before we say what he said in response, let me show you why Donald Trump was able to dodge this question. Because he is at an event during a war, in the first week of the war, promoting fairness in like women's college sports. That's what this event is for. Mind you, he hasn't taken any interview where it's one-on-one explaining why we have to go do this. Netanyahu has. We've had the Israeli president on American TV to explain why we're at war. Not the American president, but instead we get this college sports. College sports.
Peter, I'll give you one more chance because that was a bad question you asked before. Go ahead.
Talking about the bad question about how dare you ask about Russia giving the intel.
We've already got a lot of sound bites
leave him in the
about the
like
sports. Can I ask one off topic?
On topic.
On topic. Okay.
Which is unusual for you. Go ahead.
Thank you. What is motivating you to do this right now? Because there is a lot of other stuff going on in the world.
Right. That's right. There's a lot. We're doing by the way, in Iran were doing very well. Somebody said,
What the fuck? So he can't be asked a question about Iran getting provided intel by the Russians to kill American soldiers. He's like, stay on topic, talk about college sports and women. But immediately he's asked, it's like, fine, why are we talking about college sports and women? And he's given the opportunity to actually care about women's college sports. But just like he didn't care about the women's hockey team, he doesn't care about this really all that much. He just cares about the political usefulness of it. So it immediately flips back to talk about Iran anyway. Like, if you're going to talk about Iran, then answer the question.
how would you score it from 0 to 10? I said I'd give it a 12 to a 15.
He says he scores his 1 to 10, or the 1 to 10 scale, the war in Iran, at a 15. Mind you, like a month ago, he said if the Iranians killed one more person, he would stop the killing. Then he did nothing until after they had largely suppressed the protests. And then he started the bombing campaign, which is likely going to have an off-ramp, which does not include the overthrow of the Islamic Republic. Now, we can't say that for sure now, but that's what the chips are seeming to fall in the direction of.
Their army is gone. They're just about, look, their navy is gone. Their communications are gone. Their leaders are gone. 2 sets of their leaders are gone. They're down to their 3rd set. Their air force is wiped out entirely. Think of it. They have 32 ships. All 32 are at the bottom of the ocean. Other than that, they're doing very well, Coach. Very well. We're doing, our military is doing phenomenally. That's the big thing for this week. We seem to have a new thing every week, but the...
Again, here is a minute of talking that is not about women's sports. He was told, oh no, we can only talk about women's sports. We can't talk about that. The, intelligence being provided to kill U.S. soldiers. You can't talk about that. Talk about women's sports. Anyway, back to Iran. So hollow.
The situation with a very bad and very sick group of leaders who were killing a lot of people. A lot of our people were being killed. They were being maimed. They were being destroyed with their bombs all over the place, planted in roads, and we call them the roadside bombs, walking around without legs, without arms, face blasted, killed many, many people. And we had a choice. We could take it and go on like that for years or do something about it, and we did something about it. And people are very impressed with our military, and they admire our military with what happened in Venezuela and what's happening now, what's happened with the B-2 bombers before this, where they took out the nuclear capability or potential of Iran. I think we're a country that's more respected than we've ever.
So he just completely doesn't talk about college women's sports at all. Just completely just doesn't talk about it. Doesn't talk about it. And at the end, he just says, but it's important to me, college sport. Here was the question that he said he wouldn't answer before then going on a rant about how good he's doing in Iran anyway.
Thank you, President Trump. It sounds like the Russians are helping Iran target and attack Americans now.
That's an easy problem compared to what we're doing here. But can I be honest? It's just... I have a lot of respect for you. You've always been very nice to me. What a stupid question that is to be asking at this time. We're talking about something else. Can we keep this maybe a little bit? Go ahead.
So to be clear, it's stupid to ask that, but it isn't stupid for him to go on a 3-minute rant about why what he's doing in Iran is good anyway. And you guys can talk about the killing of U.S. servicemen, targeting U.S. service members, but not about the intelligence provided to actually kill them. Dude, I don't know what to say to you guys. Right now, we have a reporter class that has to deal with this and just kind of has to take it, and they have to take it nonchalantly. Here's Ducey talking about it afterwards.
And he took a couple questions. I asked him about this report that the Russians are, and you'll excuse me, I just ran out here. I asked him about this report that the Russians are helping the Iranians target Americans. And the president, who wanted to stay on topic, said he thought that was a stupid question. Brett?
Nice job jogging to the camera. I know how that goes.
Oil is surging 35% this week, the largest gain in futures dating back to 1983. The Dow is suffering its worst week since April. We got weak jobs data. Market's anxious as fuck. Oil's going up. We're going to hit $100 a barrel soon. And we got to actually pretend that the reason that Trump didn't want to talk about that question is because, oh, it's not the appropriate time. We're talking about women's sports. He will want to talk about anything but the fact that the country that he has been most patient with, that he is allowed to blow him off again and again and again, to blow off ceasefire after ceasefire, to look at his 24 hours and giggle and move on for over 400 days of unending bloodshed. And his response to that is, let's not even acknowledge it. He doesn't want to acknowledge it because it's disastrous. The idea that he's giving them so much leniency in the way that the Russians have responded is that when he engages in other military operations is to still compromise Trump. It completely sabotages his entire worldview of a personal, by person, we're going to make agreements basis. He really cares about personal relationships. He cared about it when it came to Xi. He cared about it when it came to Kim Jong-un. And he cared about it when it came to Trump. And in all three instances, that personal relationship philosophy failed to deliver. And his personal sacrifices that he has made in his reputation to launder it for Vladimir Putin, to garner his trust in his, has failed. And the Russians have taken advantage of it. And now the Russians are trying to assist the Iranians in killing American service members. And the Russians are getting in return at the same time U.S. sanctions relief, because Trump is more scared about the energy impact on Americans at the pump than giving the Russians a consequence. Again, a consequence for Americans at the pump could have probably been avoided if we didn't engage in this whole operation to begin with.